If we have,
So I'm just going to check my audio. Can everybody hear me? Great.
yeah. Is this
Maybe leave that on.
committee?
Maybe turn it off. I'm just looking. No, on. Thank you. I don't need it. Thanks.
Can folks hear me as well?
Yep.
It looks like we have everyone on the committee, right?
Yes. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah.
Right. And if it's 7:01, do we want to go ahead and start?
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely.
I don't know that I should be leading this because I was the one that put the open meeting law review on there because I have not ever led meetings in this context before. But
You're doing great.
all right. So I have the agenda open next to me. So if people agree, I can just start taking us through the agenda. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay. So the first, so in case it needs to be said publicly, the meeting is being recorded. So thank you for whoever's behind the library account making that happen. We wanted to invite community comment first. If there's anyone who joined today who wanted to speak up at the beginning, and if you are here more to listen in, we can have some time for that towards the end probably as well. But if there's anyone, any non-committee members who want to add anything now, go ahead and unmute. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
Go ahead, Ben.
Thanks. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. I can hear everybody pretty good too. I just wanted to say I'm really glad, there was so much interest and motivation in people getting to be part of this group. And I just wanted to say that I think the reason this has unfolded this way, that there's this committee was formed in the beginning, was that I feel there was, and I want to say this as delicately as possible, but I think there was just definitely the recognition that the public trust in the process needed to be mended, and to that end, I think been part of a lot of efforts, and I've seen things gone too slowly, and I've seen things go too fast, and I think I don't know if there's things gone too slowly, but that can happen. I just hope that you guys take the time to do this so that everybody can feel good about it, and that you use it as the opportunity to really bring the community on board with what the library can be. I've seen there's a temptation sometimes with committees to feel like, we don't have time for public comment and hearing from people. I really appreciate your making this time at the beginning available. But insofar as you can use this as a great launch pad for whatever the library is about to become, the more public interest you can tap into, the more people feel like, yeah, they heard what we're excited about, and they're exemplifying that, the more successful this is. So that's just what I want to contribute to the conversation.
Great. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Is there any other anyone else joining who wants to add a comment before we get into the rest of the agenda? All right, I'll take that as a no. If there's other stuff that comes up as we're going, are we happy to have people weigh in the chat? Okay,
Yeah.
great. So the second part of the agenda is introduction of committee members. And I can maybe start that off because I definitely wanted that on here because I have heard lots of names, and my husband has often like given me little tidbits of who everyone is because he was born and raised here, but I don't know as many people myself. So my name is Anna Deckert. I grew up in Pomfret. My parents still live in Pomfret. I moved abroad for about 11 years after college, and most recently lived in the United Arab Emirates. Was there working for New York University's campus for 9 years, and then I moved back in 2018 to be with my husband Josh Harwood, and we eloped before it was trendy last January. And someday we'll have a party to celebrate it. But we live on Spring Road, where the house that's been under construction for many, many years that Josh is building in a big field there. So I'm excited to be on this and get to know some other people in town through this. And in terms of background, I've done hiring for my own teams. I worked in university admissions, so primarily working with international students applying to US universities. And I've done a lot of kind of evaluation within the context of universities. So similar ideas, but in a different context. And someone else wants to go next, that would be great.
I can go next. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Jenna Young, and it's a little dark where I am because the last Zoom meeting I was on, the light was right behind me here, and it was a glare. So anyway, sorry if it's a little dim. I can move if it's too dark, but I think, Anna, I might have seen someone snowshoe the words "Marry Me" in the snow outside of your home last winter. Was that right?
That was how I proposed to Josh on New Year's Day.
That is fabulous. So the Spring Road is my daily commute, at least one way, one or the other way, over or back to Randolph. So I've watched the house or the homestead go up over the years. I have worked at the Clara Martin Center for almost 30 years. This is my 30th year there, though not always in the Randolph office. I've worked actually at all offices, Barry, Wilder, and Bradford. Currently, I'm the Director of Human Resources there and do a fair bit of work on hiring, employee development, job descriptions, interviewing, recruitment, retention, the whole, anything that you'd find in HR. So I bring that to the table, but I also just love our library. I've been a regular member of the library since I moved to Tunbridge. My husband, Shane Young, was born and raised here, and our kiddos have lived here all of their lives. We're here near the top of the Stratford Road for the past 20 plus years, 21 years, I think, and are fairly regular patrons of the library for a variety of everything from winter evenings to story hours when my kids were little, to just books, movies, the gift sale at the wintertime, holiday sales, and so forth. Lots of different activities, and even participated in the plant sales way back when to raise funds. So I love our library, and I'm happy to participate on the committee to do whatever we can to help move us forward. So thanks, happy to be here.
Great.
I'm happy to go next if that's okay. Sean Maher on Ordway Road. My wife Kate and I moved to Vermont from the Boston area in 2016. I'm currently working at Chelsea Green Publishing, and I've worked in book publishing for going on 19 years. I'm the marketing director at Chelsea Green. Worked at publishing house in Boston since the early 2000s. Before that, I worked at Borders Bookstore in downtown Boston. And as a college student, I got my degree in journalism and English, but also did library work in college. I was a student assistant in my college library back in Michigan. And so there's very few things that my skills transferred to Vermont, but I thought libraries and books might might be one of them where I could weigh in with a mildly informed opinion. So so when I saw the notice for this committee, I kind of jumped at it. I've been, being new to the area and to the state, of been looking for ways to get more involved in the community and just to meet people. And I think this year in particular, that's made it even doubly, triply as hard. So again, when I saw the opportunity, jumped at it. And I'm looking forward to kind of working with you all and seeing just the mechanics of the Tunbridge government and process work. So yeah, I'm happy to kind of get started.
And Sean, did you move into George and Jacqueline's house?
Yes. So,
nice. Okay.
Yeah, so you can see the octagon. I'm up in the loft of the octagon, so that's what you're,
very cool.
you're seeing behind me.
Nice. I can jump in. I started in libraries a long time ago, and it was just to answer the question that my father asked, what was I going to do with a degree in French literature when I finished college? So I sort of punted and said I was going to go to library school, and it's been a wonderful decision. My first job was in Amherst, Mass, at the public library there, and Bill and I were looking for land to settle, but it's the 5 college area and everything was really expensive. So we kept making circles, and we had pins in a map if it had a library, a co-op, and one other thing. We paid attention to it. But then I got a job at the Vermont Law School, and I was the public services librarian and taught legal research. And then the Tunbridge directorship opened up because the woman who was the director stood up at town meeting and said that she thought she should return the $800 that was the library budget because there wasn't really any interest in the library. So that's when the Friends of the Library first formed, and I took over and was director for 13 years. But then when my kids got to school age and I wanted to work a little more and wanted to have my schedule mesh with my kids, I became the school librarian in Sharon, and then was there for 25 years, just retired about a year ago. In the meantime, just stayed linked to Tunbridge, was a trustee, was a secretary for the Friends for 20 years, headed up the book sale, and then also just recently served on the hiring committee for the Sharon public librarian. And before COVID shut us all down, I was a substitute librarian in Chelsea, working when Elizabeth couldn't. So I love libraries, I love Tunbridge, and I'm glad to be with you all.
No, I could follow Catherine. Teresa Fitzgerald. I moved to Tunbridge in 2013 with my husband. We're both retired teachers from what is really known as Northern New York. We were up on the Canadian border and taught public school. I also did some adjunct work as a professor at the SUNY College there. So I was involved with hiring at different experiences there. And in moving to Tunbridge, I started to volunteer behind the desk at the library, and then ended up with the plant sale and helping out at town meeting dinner, organizing, everything that went into that, and then found myself a trustee. And just really been involved with the library. I did take some time off from volunteering right before COVID, unfortunately. I didn't get back in. For my grandson, I went up and I took care of my grandson 2 days a week up in Essex. And I do want to say that as of the select board meeting last Monday, I was appointed to fill the vacancy on the board. And that will be in effect until the town meeting, which looks like it's going to be in May. And then that position will open up to to its normal process of appointing someone. But I feel like I really know the library. I've worked very closely with the current employees there, with Catherine over some events. And yeah, I'm glad that I can be in this position to get involved and see how well we can do with filling some really big shoes.
Okay, I will go. I'm Kathy Teramy. It's so great hearing everyone's stories. I'm thinking we should do this like all the time, just informally with different groups, since we can't be together with people right now. Gosh, thinking back, the library actually has a really big role in our move to Tunbridge. And that's why a big part of the reason why it's so special to our family. My husband and I, right after college, when we were planning our wedding and looking for a place to move to, we found a house on the internet before there were photos on the internet. So it was only words. And we looked up an MLS listing while we were at UWM in Milwaukee and found a house that we fell in love with in words. So we came on vacation to Vermont, checked it out, and it was on top of functioning railroad tracks and immediately adjacent to an operating sawmill. So we fell in love with Vermont, moved here, and spent a year house hunting. And we're willing to pretty much live anywhere within 30 miles of the jobs that we found in Hanover at that time. And I think we read in some little publication like Picket Fence Preview, it said, stop in the library in a town to see if it's a place you want to live, because you'll get a vibe of the whole town from the library. So we did that in every town. When we looked at houses, we stopped in the library. And we also had some friends from nearby places who kind of gave us a bad impression of Vermont, that they weren't welcoming to outsiders. And when we walked into the Tunbridge Library after viewing the house that we live in now, Jean was there, and it was in the old building where the town offices are now. And she welcomed us with open arms, loaded us down with information, photocopied things about the town history, told us way more than we ever expected to discover about this little town. And we drove away saying, oh my gosh, we need to move to that town. So we didn't know even about the Tunbridge Fair at that time until Jean told us about it. So we didn't move here for that. So here we are 20 some years later. We raised both of our kids here. Our kids went through the school, and we have been loyal library patrons ever since. So right now I work in a nonprofit organization. I've actually worked with them straight out of college and helped found it as a nonprofit organization, do a lot of collaborations with organizations across Vermont and New Hampshire to do career development for students. So we work with K through 12 schools, about 190 schools, and about 500 employers a year, plus a lot of other nonprofit organizations. So that's the work that I do professionally.
Fern, I think you're last.
Last, yes. I moved here to Tunbridge after I retired from my career in library administration. And I promptly went to the library to become a volunteer. And from then that led to my present position in the trustees.
And thanks everyone. I feel like I should also mention that the reason why I look like a ghost is that the snow took out our internet. So I'm taking advantage of the hotspots down in downtown Tunbridge in the car. So apologies for that. Normally I'll have lights on. And I also just wanted to add that I'm also this year doing an MBA at UVM and commuting back and forth to Burlington for the year, which is a little bit of a strain, but yeah, so that'll affect my scheduling some.
Hey, gang! I just wanted to jump in here real quick. My name is Mark. I'm one of the trustees. I know most of you. 2 years ago at town meeting day, or slightly before that, I was asked to join the board because at the time I was told that they were looking for younger folks who are parents and also a man, because those are the three things that were at the time lacking. So I'm a young man with children. I live in town, and for me, the call was such a simple answer. The library has done so much for me and my family. Most of my wife and I's friends we've met through the library. The same goes for our children. And so for me, is quite simply a civic duty to give back. This library has done so much for my family in terms of connecting us with the community. And I'm just really excited to see what this board comes up with. So thank you all. I'm so blown away by the participation of this community. I mean, it really is humbling and inspiring, and it's just such a wonderful thing to be a part of. So thank you all.
Nice.
Really, I really mean it. And that's on behalf of me and my wife and our little kiddos.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. So the next thing on the agenda, which I put on there, was the open meeting law review. And thank you. I think Kathy, was it you that sent around the document, the FAQs about that, which I did take a look. And I just wanted to make sure, I've been taking some notes on this because I understand that one of the requirements is that we have minutes for all of our meetings. And it sounds like we've sorted out the putting together an agenda and getting that posted ahead of time. Did anyone else have thoughts or questions that others can maybe answer in terms of how the open meeting law will affect what we're doing? Kathy?
I had one question about the paper postings, because when I was looking at the FAQs and the different aspects of how to post the meeting, I think the meeting had to be warned a certain number of days ahead, and then the agenda had to be posted, I think it was 2 days ahead. But it talked about on a website if you have one. So because the library has one, it has to go on the website, and I saw it there, but I'm not going into town at all. And so I didn't know if it was getting posted on paper in town. It sounded like 5 days before for the meeting warning and 2 days before for the agenda, unless someone read it differently.
Posted the warning and the agenda. I posted the warning and the agenda actually a week ahead of time. That's what the trustees usually been doing. So I did it in the 3 locations around town.
Okay.
And also on the Tunbridge listserv.
Okay. So it sounds like we went above and beyond what needed to be done. So that's good. I just wasn't sure about the postings because I haven't been out and about in town for quite a while.
Fern, would those be, so is it inside the post office, on the library door, and then maybe at town offices? Are those your 3 locations?
It's on the bulletin board outside the post office,
Okay.
on the door of the library, and also on one of the windows at the town.
Okay, great.
Great. On the outside.
Yeah, and then just to follow up, Anna, we do need to post the minutes. I took the liberty of printing the agenda with some larger spaces between all the items, so I can kind of note, and I'm sure we'll reach a point where we'll decide, if we'll have an official secretary and how those postings happen. Fern, can I ask you, how do you post on the library website? Do you need an administrator to do that?
No, I have the password to post the agenda and the minutes, and also the announcement of the upcoming meetings.
Okay.
So, and does that process works well, how we did it this time? Circulating a draft of the agenda, and then we'll let Fern know when it's finalized and can be posted.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Great.
wondered, just a quick question that I'm not sure I entirely quite yet understand all of the trustees, but with Teresa being added recently, is this considered an official meeting of the trustees, given that a quorum, I think, is present? And if so, do you need to like officially open the meeting, close the meeting? Like, I'm just not sure if that changes things because it's more than a committee who's present at the meeting.
Well,
It's not a
It's
trustees
not a
meeting, right?
trustees meeting, and
It's
there's
not a
not a
trustees meeting.
quorum of trustees.
Oh, there isn't. Okay.
There's
So
only two at the present
There-
time.
I think there's Mark, Fern, and Teresa. I believe you have
that-
a quorum.
with Mark being present, even though he's not on the subcommittee. My understanding from reading over
Yeah,
the
we
bylaws.
make a quorum with the three of
But
us.
Right.
you're
But
not on the
I'm
committee.
not on
Mark.
this committee. I'm just participating. I'm just being.
Right.
So I read over that section of the meeting laws, and so long as the trustees on this call don't hijack the committee call to then do trustee business that should be at trustee meetings, then it's fine if they're at this meeting, even if it's a certain number of them. So as long as what's being accomplished in this meeting doesn't go into what ought to be in a trustee meeting.
And Jenna, I
then
think the
that's
next
fine. I didn't
trustees
specifically
meeting,
address that in
the
that.
next trustees meeting is February 8th, and we'll link up with them as our committee.
Yeah, I actually wasn't concerned about that part so much as just my experience on the school board is if there was a quorum of us present in the room at any one time, regardless more so of purpose, it constituted kind of a level of officialness that needed to be recognized because we were together. But that I've not referred to the statute that you sent, so maybe that's not the case here. I just was thinking that we had 3 out of 5 present on the call.
That's actually what just happened at the select board's informational meeting for the petition vote for the school district. The school board members who came just to be there, not to run the meeting, host the meeting, have their own agenda, they had to warn a meeting because they were concerned they would have a quorum who would attend that meeting. So it's definitely but it sounds like Anna looked at it. I did not look that up. So it's a good point, Jenna, but I also didn't realize there'd be a quorum at the committee
And
meeting.
you guys,
Brought it up in the FAQs in the context of, like, say it's town meeting and everyone is there, and so then you have all these other kind of groups that are there, and it said that so long as then those groups are not getting together and discussing business of a different, of select board or a meeting that's not part of town meeting, then it's fine.
Okay. I'm not sure the ins and outs. I just thought I would ask the question because I'm not certain myself,
Yeah.
but that was our experience with the school board.
Yeah. I did do some reading over of the bylaws, and for example, if Mark and I and Catherine happen to meet publicly somewhere and had a conversation, we really would have to be very careful as to what was said because it could be considered a quorum, and you're in that role of trustee. But I do know that we do have to post the minutes within 5 days, and they remain up for a year. And as a subcommittee of the board, we pretty much follow all those same guidelines. So I think as long as we stay on our agenda and don't branch off into other things that the board might talk about, I think we should be okay. And there's not any voting happening at this time.
I just took a peek at that section, and it looks like what Anna said was right about if you go to another municipal meeting, but this is a library meeting. So it looks to me like it could be an issue if this group voted on things or if you took any action. And didn't we decide at the last meeting that this committee wouldn't be taking action or voting on things? So I think as long as if you do have a quorum of trustees here, I would just make sure, because it doesn't matter if it's on this agenda or not. If you're taking action it says for the body, which I think means the trustees, or the public library. So it does seem, Jenna, like it's a good thing to bring up, and it's something good to be aware of. And like you, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I would definitely be aware of it. And if we're not taking action, that should help. But at the same time, one of the trustees might want to seek advice on that, because it would be great to have this committee be very clean and not have any issues come out of it. That would make me feel a lot better.
And I have a question too. I noticed I had been following the library, even though I wasn't physically active, with the minutes and things. And so I kind of felt like I had a pulse on how things were going. And I recently been doing that with select board, partly because of the school. I wanted some information, and then more so with the library. And it's very nice. You go to the town website and you go to the select board and you can click minutes and you can see their agenda, and you can also have the recording and you can actually watch the video if you're not able to be present at the actual meeting. Is that something that we are set up to do? Because even as we're speaking, I'm not sure if anyone is getting all of this down for the minutes.
Teresa, are you asking about this committee or the trustees? That sounded like a trustee question.
The recording of this meeting, is that going to be publicly accessible?
Ben did post one of the recordings that we took at a previous meeting. You'd have to check with him about posting all of them if you want them done. That's his department, not mine.
Okay. It was kind of nice to be able to go back and look at the select board minutes. And then if you were kind of curious, you could, scroll through the timeline of the meeting and kind of stop and pick up where you wanted to get your information.
I'm gonna check to see how they've got that going on. If they have like a Vimeo account that allows the links stores the links, stores the video. What I've done when people requested videos, I email it to them, but I totally agree. It's much more accessible if someone can click on it without a request. So let's see if I can get that figured out in the next week and looks similar to what the select board's got. I agree, that's really handy.
It's just, it's the most transparent and people can make their own interpretations or, hear us and see us and understand what we're working on. More so than maybe words that are, put in minute form.
Okay, so Ben, we'll follow up on the video and ways that can be posted. Teresa or Fern, could either of you see if you can get any more info about if there are 3 or more trustees on this call, if that changes anything that we need to do in terms of how we go about things in our discussions?
If it's all right with you, Teresa, I can check with the state library consultant, because we've already had numerous conversations in person or by email with her, if you'd rather that I did it.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Fern.
Yeah.
Anything else on the open meeting laws? It sounds like I'm taking notes and Teresa's taking notes, so we should be able to put together minutes afterwards, and then share that with everyone before getting it posted. All right. So then the next item was a discussion of whether we should have any roles within this committee. So I don't know what that would look like, in terms of having someone leading the meetings. We can rotate that. We can identify one person, scheduling meetings, taking notes. Does anyone have thoughts on what might work best for that?
I do have a question. I didn't see anything in open meeting law about committee structures. And so then it made me wonder what the bylaws for the library say for committees. The nonprofit I work for actually outlines what committees, and we have project teams and the board with like which ones need which. So are there are we required to have positions on the committee that we need to take a look at? Or is it open and up to the committee to decide?
I've got a copy of the trustee bylaws right here. I can skim them while the meeting is going on, see if there's anything specifically regarding the subcommittees, if you want.
That'd be great.
Yeah, sometimes it could be like a member of the parent board needs to be the chair. Like there could be something like that written in the bylaws, or they're not, if it's meant to be really a public committee. So it'd be good to know that before we decide.
Any other thoughts on what would work for this while Fern reviews that, if there's not any guidance in the bylaws or what people's preferences are? I'm very happy to kind of move us through an agenda, and if that's helpful, but we can also rotate if other people enjoy that role.
There is a section in here on committees, just starting on my page 2 here, but let me just read what it says. There's 4 points. Committees will be appointed as needed. A committee shall consist of at least 2 board members and may include persons not on the board of trustees. Point 3 is a committee may only study and advise. Any action will be taken by the entire board. A committee may be dissolved by a vote of the board.
It's good that Teresa turned into a board member. So it sounds like no guidance on positions within the committee, but definitely no voting or making decisions, just the studying and advising is our role.
And if you don't mind taking us through, it's great with me. And as far as secretary, I thought maybe Fern was going to be the secretary. Fern, am I nominated?
I assumed I would be, since I'm the secretary of the board. I don't have to be. Somebody else can take the minutes and obviously I'm the person that has to post them and post a schedule of meetings on the website, but
If you'd be willing, Fern, I think the one, I don't know if I'd call it a concern, but I felt like it's great we got to this point, we got the agenda, but I'm not even sure that the agenda was put together with everyone's input, maybe finalized. I know Kathy, we were going back and forth, and I even saw on the document itself, when you open up the agenda, there's like a side chat thing. I don't even know how that works. And it looked like a few people had chimed in, but not everyone. So I think having a point person, and if Fern's willing to do that, I think there'd be some nice consistency with making sure the agenda is complete. Everyone's says we're good to go, get that posted, and then following up with the minutes being posted. That'd be great if you were up to doing that, Fern.
Sorry, repeat that, Teresa. I'm sorry. That I would post the agenda to the members of the committee?
Having consistency in the person doing the warning, the agenda and the minutes. Would all of that fall to you as secretary, or that role?
As posting it? I'm sorry, as posting it, Teresa?
Right, basically from the beginning of trying to set up a meeting until the meeting is complete in the minutes, like the whole. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Teresa, I do remember at the last trustees meeting, I can't remember who said it, and I can't remember what the decision was, but it was suggested to not have Fern do all of that, because I think someone said that's a lot, that's expecting a lot if they're going to be taking notes, posting the minutes, posting the agenda, to have them also create the agenda. I know Anna started the agenda, and maybe you did that because you heard that. I don't know. So I don't know if other people remember that, but I think, I don't know if Fern is also
really not
secretary.
Comfortable with starting the agenda.
Yeah.
I'm really not comfortable with starting the agenda.
Right.
You can certainly, reach out to the rest of the committee to see if when it's ready to be posted, that it's final and everyone's happy with what's on it. I don't mind that, but
I
don't
wonder
know
if there's a way. I found like the email communication we had, like it said contact info and then it got really big and it split into many strands. Like sometimes someone would reply to an older version and not the most recent one. So like after a while, it just got hard for me to follow who said what. And I wondered if, and Anna, I'm not volunteering you, but let's say that you started a Google Doc with the agenda. Could people log on and initial it and you give them a day? You say, please, everybody look at this by Friday, January, whatever. And maybe initialing it is just like over the top, but it's a way for you to know someone logged in and looked at it. And then if they don't by that date, then, that sometimes people are busy and they don't have a chance and they trust everyone else to do that. That's okay too. But maybe we could have a process that's a little bit self-service and it's the responsibility of each member of the committee, unless someone has trouble logging into a Google Doc, which some people can't. So maybe we need another method, but just an idea to kind of say, like, looks good. Because once it starts building over email, it can be hard to follow who actually looked at it and to have one person have to watch all that could be hard.
Yeah, I think
So is everybody okay with a Google Doc then? Everybody okay with a Google Doc?
yeah.
Great,
Yeah, works
good
for
idea.
me, no problem.
Kathy, I think I agree that there wasn't like a set sort of ending point of commentary, and like, yes, everyone has weighed in and it's done. So I started that document just because nothing else had been started, but I can add something at the top that will let people kind of, I like the idea of like initializing or somehow kind of showing that you've seen the document and you're okay with it going forward. So I can do a similar one for next time, and then we can all, even if you don't have any comments, just write on there that you've seen it and you're good for it to go, and then we can let Fern know when it's ready to be posted.
And I would just second the idea of having a hard deadline for agenda ads. So if it's, if the meeting is on a Monday night, have Thursday at 5, end of day Thursday as a hard deadline, just so people have time to digest what's on the agenda and reply, and kind of prepare for it too.
Yeah, and I can I'll add the deadline at the top of it so that's easily visible to everyone.
And then,
okay.
However you shared it with us gave us the ability to edit or comment. You can decide if you can also give people like just commenting ability if you don't. I went in and like typed a few things, and that can be hard for the document owner. I know you can go look at the history, but you could choose if you wanted us to comment or go ahead and edit and then kind of manage, because people could suggest two opposing things, and at some point you need to figure out which direction you'll take it on the agenda.
Yeah, I purposefully left that open for everyone to comment in there directly or to make edits. So I think maybe we can just be mindful if you think something should come off of the agenda, maybe that's the time to then send an email around to the rest of the group, kind of highlighting that or adding a comment saying that ought to be changed rather than just deleting something or, but otherwise I think certainly for adding things, I didn't want people to have to go through me for that. So can keep going with that. Okay. Great. Anything else on that side of the process? Okay. So just to summarize, so I'll start the agenda again for the next meeting and open that up to all of you to make edits and add things, and then we'll add a deadline and add a way for people to kind of give the thumbs up on that before it's sent to Fern. And Fern, you will, in the role of secretary within the meetings, you'll take charge of doing minutes for the meetings. Is that correct?
If that's the role that the committee wants me to do, then yes, certainly kind of used to it as doing it for the trustees for the last, I don't know, year and a half or whatever it is.
I think if you're willing to do that, that would be great. Okay.
And I just want to
Great.
mention one thing I did pull off of the open meeting laws on the agenda. The designated of a physical location, I guess that's our Zoom link, right? Because we're not really meeting anywhere physically. And the piece about the public input, the open community part. They do suggest that that
Yeah.
is, it might be more than suggested, that that is the first piece, because then that allows the committee to deal with any comments that come in. And then it does suggest that you could also put it at the end so that if there needed to be action. But I did want to mention that it does appear as though that, that community comment section opens the meeting.
Yeah, I saw that, and that was definitely something that I didn't know where to put. So I think someone chimed in and moved that to the beginning, which we'll be sure to keep that at the beginning of the agenda for all the ones going forward.
And,
Great.
I mean, you can think about this, but I might just add the discussion that happens during the meeting might trigger a comment that someone who's on the call would like to make. So I do think that folks found it helpful in other committees to have both public comment at the start and at the end, again, just to see if there's something that someone thought of, or maybe they joined late and missed the beginning or what have you, that if part of the goal is truly gathering community input and transparency and feedback, I think there's no harm in giving a second shot at near the end of the meeting, just to make sure there isn't some other piece out there that someone would like to share.
That sounds great.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. Great. So the next item on the agenda is the kind of meat of the meeting. So I think February 8th is when we're joining the trustee meeting, and that's kind of our due date for getting some info back to the trustees. I had put down kind of 3 ideas of questions that we might want to discuss. So if there's any further info that we need in order to get going on this work, to request from the trustees or from other places, and then brainstorming about those 2, what I understood to be the 2 kind of key things we're supposed to be working on. So the redoing the job description, and then how we're gathering community input.
Could I say that it seemed like at the last meeting there was a natural sort of bifurcation happening, that some people said they'd be glad to work on the job description, and some people said that they would be happy to work on the community input piece. And it seems to me, rather than have 7 of us try to wordsmith the job description, that we could divide those 2 responsibilities, and I'd be willing to work on the job description.
Yeah,
I'd be willing to do the community input.
Yeah, I would find myself maybe on the job description. I was kind of following through with the information Eve had sent us on there's some room there for salary and benefit work that we can work on. So I would be glad to bring that piece to the not necessarily probably the job description part, but kind of piggybacking on kind of getting ahead of myself, but with actually writing up the job itself, I suppose, because we are changing from a salaried position to an hourly position.
that was a piece that I feel like I could join you as well on. I read the 4 job descriptions that came out, and the taskmaster part of me instantly wanted to dive into them and fix them all and put them in a structured format. So I I could join you, Teresa and Catherine, on that if you'd like.
Sounds great.
Okay, so Jenna, Catherine, and Teresa would focus more on the job description. And I'm happy to then join. Sean, I know you had said before that you're more interested in the community input, right?
I think so. Yeah. I think that, and I do, having said that openly, I realized I painted myself in a corner. So I do have some questions about that too. But yeah, that it does make sense.
I'm happy to join on that as well with Kathy. Okay.
And I don't think by dividing that means each committee member can't say something or have
Sure.
input about the other thing. We're all
Sure.
still working on both tasks, but I'm sure there's a lot of legwork that needs to be done behind the scenes that could be so much more efficient with 2 smaller groups. So it's not like I'm completely letting go of the job descriptions. I'd love to look at them and give input here or there if, that group circulates it to everybody. But I certainly don't need to be working hands-on on that one. So
I have a question then, going back to open meeting stuff. If we are, say there's kind of a draft that Jenna puts together with edits to a job description and then emails it to the group, and Catherine is weighing in on that. Is that kind of interaction fine to have over email and then like discussing the edits at the next meeting? It seemed like so long as it's done by email and there could be a record of that, that's okay.
that's a good question. I've been on other municipal committees where that has happened. Not that that means it was right, but because this committee is not taking action, I feel like any email correspondence, like just what we did to do the agenda, I mean, you don't make that public and take minutes on that, just the creation of the agenda. And so I don't know how others are feeling about it, but especially since decisions won't be made until the trustees see the work, it seems like that task-oriented work over email is okay. What do others think?
I think
Phew, I sure hope so.
I think it likely is, given that the committee itself does not have a quorum.
Yeah.
And I know that the messaging through school board and maybe other boards as well is you shouldn't be having discussions with the entire group through an email as if you had a meeting, but you're just doing it electronically. More so you're sending information out, here's something to preview before our next
Right.
meeting. And then if someone had a comment, the comment went back just to the sender, not necessarily to the whole group. But I don't know that we necessarily need to be that careful on this committee because we don't have the quorum on the committee, but just it can be a way to disseminate information, but not necessarily having an electronic discussion that's not in front of the public.
So would one good thing to do be to say either of those 2 groups can't host like a Zoom meeting or a meeting? Like that would be where it could cross the line. Like if Sean and I and Anna said, oh, let's just get together on Zoom to talk about this, then that would seem like a meeting, right?
I know, I was just thinking about that. And originally I assumed we would like break down in our committees and like either go into side rooms or do it. But then you get into the whole thing, should you be warning that little meeting? So maybe better we can do some of the editing over email and then just bring everything back to the group that has been warned, the meeting's been warned and all.
That's what I would lean towards. I definitely, if someone else feels like they have expertise in this area, I would defer to them. But I think since we're not making decisions and this is all ultimately going towards, like, even the final product is just a recommendation that's being presented towards the trustees, I feel like we're not in very dangerous territory in terms of collaborating for edits. And I think especially then if each of those kind of teams bring those to the whole committee at our next meeting to kind of discuss them together, then and make that part public. And I think that also, I think we should certainly, I think that's part of the public input, having some of those kind of drafts maybe midway through that others outside of our committee can also weigh in on in case we're missing anything and they have some good ideas to add. So I feel like if we approach it that way, I would expect that to be appropriate.
I did just peek at the open meeting law, and it does say that subcommittees of committees appointed by the board need to comply with open meetings law as well. So I don't think we should call them subcommittees, and I don't think we should have meetings. Okay. Which means during these committee meetings, we need to make sure that we talk collectively as a big group about what exactly that email correspondence is going to be about. So I think we do need to set aside time at this public committee meeting to say, well, okay, public input, what will that look like? What do we want to do? What don't we want to do? To handle it. You talk about it in public, what you're going to do, and then you handle over email the edits and the back and forth on it.
Sounds good. And you guys, I don't know if this is the right time, but at some point during the meeting, can we take a look at our big picture time frame? And I realize, Kathy, I must be a little bit of an East person because I would like to know, when I think of us working on the job description, I mean, we're the first part because we can't advertise the job until we get the job description done. So, this is this whole process that stacks up. But if we know like that we're trying by March or whatever to hire, and then we back up, we, want a month to advertise or whatever, but can we give ourselves a little bit of parameters within which to work?
I'm not sure that we have that. I think that would be a question that I would put back to the trustees. My understanding was that the February
Okay.
8th was kind of the first deadline where having
Okay.
maybe just a draft of a job description, and if everyone's okay with it, then great. But if it needs to go back for more edits, then maybe that's part of it.
Okay.
But in the last trustee meeting, I didn't get a clear sense of the longer timeline.
No, I think I'd have to agree. And I'm laughing, Catherine, because when Jenna spoke up, I wondered if she had picked west for her directionality. If you had time,
I was actually gonna.
I definitely.
I was gonna change my name to Northwest on the bottom. A little bit of both.
That's kind of where I'm at. I just want to quickly mention, I've been working off of, I did the bylaws, but I also found this commonly asked questions, frequently asked questions. I did stick it on the end of one of our email chains that we had going there, and it does specifically address the email. Do group emails violate the law? Not necessarily. Group emails may be used to schedule a meeting, create an agenda, or to distribute materials to discuss at a meeting. Group emails should never be used for discussion purposes, which is why you should avoid hitting the reply all button. Emails generally will be available for copying and inspecting as public record. So if you have a chance, I attached it to one of the emails out there. I just found it when I was looking for the bylaws, and it just answers a lot of the questions I think that may continue to pop up for us. But that's a good piece right there about the email, the use of email.
All right, since we don't have to do the big picture, back for a minute to the job description. I did get a copy of a job description for Sharon, for Chelsea, and for Corinth. And boy, are they different. Whoa. So I thought if the little, not to be called subcommittee, the little PAL group, if I get you the copies of those and we look at them and decide what we think the really key points are, and then how we want to present it to give the vibe of our library, keeping in mind something Kathy said at another meeting about how lofty job descriptions can get. And I know it's true. So we'll try to have the balance of really kind of small town library, but yet also complete as we can. So if I send you folks those, we already have, thanks to Fern, the job description Jean wrote, right? So then we'll have 3 more to kind of interlay or to see what we think the key points are. And then do we want to respond over email? I think well, I'll let that
Yeah,
go.
I think that would be helpful, even to just highlight. I'm guessing you're going to see some themes, and
Exactly.
that's where
Exactly.
I think it's the trustees who truly have the vision of what they're looking for out of that role. But clearly, we'll see some themes in what other librarians' focus areas are, and I'm particularly interested in a qualification section that our current one describes pretty high educational standards, which I love as a general theme, but I think it narrows the field considerably when we're dealing with a
Okay.
lot of workforce challenges. So, that's just questions I would have is just around qualifications for that role in particular.
Great. Okay. So our goal is to have something to, are we going to bring it back to this committee before the 8th? Are we having another meeting before the 8th?
I
I
think we
wondered that
should.
too.
I think
Think we should?
we need to schedule it, but I think that would be
Okay.
helpful maybe to come back and kind of, identify what direction we're in for these two things so that then we can all discuss it together. And now that we've gotten all the
Great.
other stuff out of the way in this meeting in terms of introductions and stuff, that can maybe be a more productive meeting.
Great. And then I just wanted to leave a little wedge of time to take whatever job description we come up with to talk to the staff about it. I think Kathy, you and I might have had a little discussion about, the importance of getting the on the ground feedback also. So just to leave that.
I was actually going to ask because it wasn't on the agenda, but it was mentioned somewhere about staff input. And I think for the community input that we're gathering, that's like the bigger, that input is meant to be broader for the library, and I think staff members could contribute to that community input in the same way a community member could, but I think there's something totally separate, and that's staff input, talking to staff about hiring a director, which could be invaluable, but I think it's completely different from community input. So Catherine, I'm glad you brought it up because it wasn't on the agenda, and I don't think it fits in the community input section.
Okay, great.
Maybe if we can just take a few minutes, if other folks have comments about like the current job description or things that that we want to bring up and have on everyone's minds as that's being done. I thought it was notable that I think the assistant director position had like a long bulleted list of kind of very detailed responsibilities, and the director position was much more vague. I think it didn't really talk about staff management in a very robust way, which I would think that should be a pretty significant part of that, and the kind of leadership skills or soft skills that would speak to that. So that was something that stood out to me when I was looking at the current draft. I'm trying to think. I think those were the sort of main things, but I agree that an interesting perspective of developing, what are those soft skills that they should have. The current staff would probably have some helpful input on like what they would want to see in a successful director, both positive or what they don't want to see in a director, maybe as well. Did anyone else have thoughts or comments that we should share now so that the folks working on that are aware of it?
I do, but I see Sean turned his mic off, or on, so I'd like him to comment first if you have anything.
No, go ahead.
Okay. The only just a couple of general things about the job descriptions. I thought it would be really good to have them parallel, just so that, and Anna, you just pointed out a discrepancy between two of them. So just to make them all parallel and to make sure that nobody's name appears on them. I don't think job descriptions should have a person's name on them, and I think at least one of them did. They should be anonymous. It should be a general job description without a person's name on it. At least that's what I'm accustomed to. So I was thinking of just having parallel sections. So if this committee is tasked with the director job description, I think there's some domino effect of the other job descriptions too that would have to align with that to make that work. And then I was also wondering about position titles. If it's changing from a waged position or a salaried position to an hourly wage, things like that. I didn't know about those 3 position titles, if those just kind of came about case by case, or if they were part of a staff planning, like looking at your whole staff and coming up with the positions versus adding on a new person and creating a position for them. So that was another thought I had, is the position titles and what that looks like in the whole staff picture.
Can I just say that I think our job is just the director position, however, and I think it's good to keep in mind that then it will have a domino effect, but it's really up then to the director to come up with the other job descriptions. So the trustees have charged us to come up with the director, but that's all I'm signing on for, I think. So we shouldn't be doing the assistant director and the
Catherine, I understand that, but I wonder if this committee is coming up with the library director position, then do we need to ask the trustees to come up with the categories that should be on all of the job descriptions? Or do we create the director job description with the categories this committee thinks they should all have? So I hear what you're saying. So we either need to go to the trustees and get that, or we create it as a model and hope. But I hear what you're saying, that the director would then create those positions. But if the director job description is being created now, do we need to ask the trustees what those categories are?
I don't want to get spread too thinly, because we can't post the job until we come up with a job description. And we were asked to come up with a job description for the director. And I think that's what we should work on. And then I think that should be our focus.
I think I'm curious, Catherine, did you say Chelsea, Sharon, and Corinth? Was that the third? I'm really curious to see how those libraries are organized and what their directors' duties and tasks may entail, and then maybe reflect on how we are currently structured, and if there is some overlapping, it might just kind of, naturally happen, or just kind of organically,
Sure.
kind of merge out of this somehow, because it's such a well-oiled machine right now, the Tunbridge Library, with different people doing different roles, and when we start breaking that apart, it just, I feel like it's going to have a new identity.
Sure. And I did, when I talked to Chelsea and Sharon, ask them about their staffing structure.
Yeah.
So we can compare that.
It just would be interesting to look at the big picture that way, as we're gathering info, because we're really at the gathering stages at this point, I think. So that would be my thought.
And Catherine, you're going to send those out, right?
I will. I'll send them out tomorrow.
And does everyone have the current? I have 4 different positions I can look at here from our current staff.
Yeah, but again, Teresa, I think, well, I don't want to limit us too much, but I think that our focus should at least start by being the library director. So you've got the one from that Fern sent. I mean, we also have the other ones, and then I'll send 3 more from neighboring libraries. And then, as you said, we'll let it go organically.
Okay, good.
I guess that even if we didn't dive into the other 3 and they are what they are, perhaps the director, one that we create, will have a structure that the others can follow in terms of, name, purpose, essential functions, qualifications, reporting relationship, and you just put you can drop those others into it, because it also wasn't clear if we're doing all 4 or just the one. So that's helpful, Catherine.
Okay, great.
I feel like our goal should be to come up with a fantastic one for the director, and then the trustees can copy that format for the other ones if they think it's as good as we think it is. Yeah.
All right, you guys, we've got our mission. Fantastic. A fantastic job description.
Do we want to take a little bit of time to talk about community input and what that might look like? I feel like, to me, there's a question of like, how do we think we can kind of reach out to people? So like the logistics of it, of gathering that, as well as then the content of what we're asking. So I don't know if anyone has ideas about what works, what doesn't work.
And and if I can just ask a kind of a backup question to that, is just to define what we mean by community input. Like, what are we looking to learn from the community? I think, Fern, it was your suggestion at the trustee meeting to kind of do some homework, look at the minutes, which was very helpful. I went back and kind of read the trustee meeting minutes over the last several months, and in a few spots community members did, it's noted that they were looking for more of a voice, more of more input. And I just wondered if the trustees would have, if those conversations developed in any direction, if there are things we could learn from those past community conversations, or yeah. So I guess my overall question is just like, how are we defining community input, and what kind of answers are we looking for?
The library trustees sent out a request to the community as to what they wanted to see in their library. And I forgot exactly how many responses we received on what the community wants to see in from their library. I can check, because I think it was Eve that compiled the list and changes that people wanted, and et cetera, et cetera. So I can check with the other trustees and get the definitions from the survey that we did take. It was like the summer last year that we did it. So I could find out that information.
That would be great also, so that we're not repeating anything that people feel like they've already contributed. But if that wasn't specifically kind of towards the director position, maybe that's how we can orient this a little bit.
Yeah, it was definitely not directed towards what they wanted to see in a library director. No.
Great.
And I also think it's okay, to continually seek community input, and it's okay if some things are repeated, because there's always turnover of residents in town and new people coming in, and there could be an ongoing community input process for the library. But Sean, I think you're asking a good question, and in order for us, the three of us, to work on the community input, the logistics, of course, are important, but I feel like first we need to figure out what exactly is the scope and scale of what we're asking and gathering. When I had initially found out about the hiring process and the status of it, I wrote a letter to the trustees, and one of my first questions was, did you collect staff and community input? The change of a long time director is an excellent time to find out from the community, like, what is important to them about the library and where they want to see the library go into the future. And that can help guide the hiring process, so that if the trustees are interviewing candidates, they kind of have that community input there. So if they hear a candidate highlighting all sorts of experiences that connect to and align with what the community input patterns are, that's kind of hard to do. It's tricky work, but maybe there's just a few things that are highlights that could help with that process, versus hiring someone that kind of, or if they have a candidate who has some really strong skills, but they go in the opposite direction that the community is interested in seeing the library go, that could be helpful. So I don't know how. I think it would be good to have the whole committee, while we're here right now, to kind of just chime in on that. Like, what kind of input would be helpful to the hiring process? Some of it would be nice, to have the job description in front of us. So there is that chicken and the egg that's constantly going to be happening. But I think that would help me in figuring out, like, what is the tone of the community input? What is the theme? What are we asking people for? And then how we get there is, how would community input help the hiring process?
I think one thing that I would be really curious to hear about is kind of, when you have such a huge transition that's sort of a generational transition kind of in some ways, it's an interesting opportunity to look quite a ways ahead of like, what is the next chapter of the library's role. And, for someone who, I don't have young kids who are using the library in that way, but I have really struggled with internet access. I have worked remotely in town with no internet at home. There are things like that where I've, the biggest benefit that the library has been to me has been being able to park my car outside and do calls from my car using the Wi-Fi there. Now that we have 2 hotspots in town, it feels very luxurious. But things like that maybe people have, aspirations in terms of like, how can the library grow and be even better and do different things, which I think could then help in recruiting someone, but also help then if that person comes in as kind of a starting point and some guidance about, what are some bigger long-term goals that they can be working on. And I think that would be really interesting to hear, how people might conceive of the library beyond its current capacity.
I'd also love to hear from the committee members who aren't going to be working on that back and forth, although everyone will be able to give input before anything happens. But I just have a couple of quick examples. When I was on 2 different principal search committees at 2 different times for the Tunbridge School, one many, many years ago, and then one a few years ago, they did community input. And the first time, the community was so interested in discipline, like discipline was the important thing. So I remember the search committee really looked for someone who really had a handle on, it was middle school discipline. And that was really interesting to see that hiring process take the shape of the community input. And that was from teachers, parents, and community members. And then the next time, discipline didn't even come up in the community input. I think it was more educational quality and other things. So I think it's a little tricky too, because when you survey the community, your input collected is only as good as like what your reach was for getting the survey questions out there or doing focus groups, whatever it might be. So you have to be careful of not like giving a lot of weight to whatever community input you collected if it's not a broad range or a broad cross section of the community. So I did have in my mind finding a way to get input from all stakeholders so that we can ask kids questions if, through their parents, maybe we can ask families questions. We can ask people who work from home or professionals who don't have kids or people who are retired. So just making sure whatever we're asking the community that we're getting that cross section. So it's one thing that's popped into my mind.
Kathy, I just want to really support that, because I feel like for all of us who've been associated with the library, it's always been about serving our patrons really well, but trying to reach out to the people who aren't coming into the library, who don't feel like part of the library. So just through your asking, reaching different groups, I think that's the first step toward bringing more in. And and once, and I think it's kind of like, I'd like to know what people's vision is for the library. And then when we're doing interviewing and we check with what vision does the person we're interviewing have for libraries going forward, then we can, as Kathy said, see if there's a dovetailing going on. But I do know that it's hard sometimes to get people to really imagine all the things a library can do. So that's just however you reach out to spark the imagination of what, because we do lots of things well, but we can do more too. So
I wonder if there are ways to kind of identify different sort of stakeholders in town. So I love the idea of going through the school to get kind of that community. If there are other individuals or groups in town that we could ask them to, solicit feedback or share a survey with their members where it might get to that audience that is not coming into the library on a regular basis. That's maybe not, on certain Facebook groups or on certain listservs. And thinking about who in the town could kind of represent some of those different voices.
And if I could just throw something out, and I'm going to watch everybody's expression to see if it's too weird, but I'd love to see us ask people at the dump, if we do a questionnaire or something, to just, get people who are going to the dump and aren't coming to the library, right? Anyway, thank you for not like looking aghast.
The two surveys committees that I participated on this summer for the school district, we had this long list of ways to reach people, but boy, it takes a lot of work and everyone's volunteers. So what I saw happen with those is, that long list of ideas ended up being a short list of reality of what happened. And so one question I would have, and I had this question for the school district, is there paid staff that can help do some of this? Because I feel like the first survey that we didn't get out to everyone it needed to, because the volunteers on the committee just didn't have the bandwidth to do it. Some of them worked full time and they weren't available during the hours. That's something, was one of the ideas. And the second round, the supervisory union pitched in and we had a better net cast with that one. So I don't know if we create a survey, this committee, if the library staff can help with getting it out there, and or if this committee through our volunteer effort has to do all of that.
Well, our agenda item is, what further do we need from the trustees? And maybe that is something that we could ask of the trustees. I can't help but think of a budget. I mean, I'm not a Facebooker, so if anything's out there on Facebook, I'm going to miss it. I know others. When you were mentioning groups in town, I'm a pretty active participant in the walking group, which hits definitely a population, and a different crosscut. I know that we have some young parents in town that are going to give us another crosscut. So, I'm going kind of on that Western twist on organizational, and are we going to be looking for something for printing? Are we looking at mailing? I mean, how do we do this? And then do we need the support of the library, the staff, and that to make it happen? That would be a question I would have.
So Fern, can you address, because when the trustees sent out the questionnaire, I mean, you put it on Front Porch Forum, you sent around an email to all of us too, I think. You made it pretty easy to respond. So there's a certain structure that's been set up already that we don't have to reinvent, right? I mean, and then we can expand from that. But that didn't have printing costs or anything.
Well, we did print up some to hand out to patrons when they came to library. Unfortunately,
okay,
unless we slip it in the library books that people get curbside, that's not going to happen for quite some time. But yes, the library staff has the email list. They send emails to patrons like every week. It seems like there's something going out. Personally, the trustees personally do not have the email list that goes out to patrons.
Is there a pickup and drop off option on the library porch right now that could be used for a survey?
Yeah.
Because I know there's all sorts of great
they
work.
used actually the bench.
Okay. So someone could pick up a piece of paper and then like put it in the book drop. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they're at the bench is usually where they leave the books, they're in an envelope for someone to pick up. We can post.
Okay. I think in the summer we were able to pick up some.
Committee can post Right. Yeah, we can post things on the library door, or even we could possibly slip them in the books that the patrons come to pick up.
a way to reach patrons. There's social media is great for getting like immediate response if you have a link to a Google form, but there's so many people not on social media, I have learned in Tunbridge. And if there, there's a good number of people that read the Herald who aren't on social media. So if you can say in the Herald that you can pick up a survey on the library porch and drop it off in the book drop, things like that. But then I have also heard there are people who are not on social media who don't subscribe to the Herald. So that's where the sandwich board is nice. But of course, right now, there's just not a lot of traffic in town. So we will have some challenges, I think, logistically, and we may need to accept, whatever the response rate is to whatever kinds of questionnaires we have. But as long as we make it available to people who are online or people who are not, I think then we're not excluding anyone or leaving anyone out by only having it one or the other.
And is there any incentive that we can offer to get people to fill out a questionnaire? Is there?
I love that idea because it's usually it can be effective. And I do know right now the library's been doing a lot of drawings from their, for different things, for like signing up for the reading program or so I don't know if that's something we'd want to tie into it, because the library has merchandise it has available for sale as part of a fundraiser. And I'm not sure that it costs the library a whole lot to make that a donation. So Sean, maybe, we could check with library staff to see if that's possible, unless there was a budget to purchase something that was a bigger incentive.
And, even a, donated books from Chelsea Green about how to grow in the springtime, or, like something that actually it's library related, it's timely and topical. And I know somebody that can donate those. So yeah, I'm just trying to think of to get more compliance with the survey, if there's something that can move the dial a bit.
Can I ask, so we've got 3 minutes left if we want to keep to 8:30 as an ending time. And so maybe this is a question for another time, but I definitely like survey is the first thing that comes to mind when we think about community input. I'm really curious about the stages of the actual hiring process, and if it's possible, appropriate, totally inappropriate to have like an open Q&A with finalists or something like that, where community members feel like it's not just that they've been part of a survey, but they've actually been able to meet people. I think that there's an inherent disadvantage to anyone who is not already maybe part of the community, where there might be a fantastic candidate, but if people feel like, well, I've never met this person, I don't even know who they are, I don't know anything about them, I feel like that was part of what came up in the last time. And so that maybe that's not on us, maybe that's more of a question for the trustees, but I think that's also worth looking into, and I don't know how that could work while respecting people's kind of privacy in the process.
That's a great idea.
I agree. The survey is like one piece of community input. Maybe this committee could recommend like a slate of community input opportunities, and maybe we work like a task force on doing some kind of survey for broader community input. But then maybe there could be other milestones along the process where the community can chime in. Thankfully, the meetings right now are on Zoom, so any community member who has access to that can log in. But to actually have like a special meeting or a time where the community can give input live, I'm sure would be well received.
So maybe that could be one of our sort of deliverables that we're working on, is a recommendation of those next steps and how that can be managed to really make people feel like they're a part of the process. And I think that if there is someone who's unknown in the community who ends up being a fantastic person who people want to hire, I think that would just make the transition that much smoother if they've already had some exposure. Yeah. Okay. So it's 8:30. Anything else that we want to get to? Are there any public comments before we close?
Before you close, or unless you're going to do this after, I think is the last agenda item to schedule the next meeting? Would that be a
Yes.
good idea to do while everybody's here?
Yes, definitely. You're right.
And we need to kind of count back for the warning and all of that.
Yeah.
I was hoping maybe February 1st, the week before the trustees meet,
Sounds good.
Monday.
That sounds great. And that gives us 2 weeks to get the, oh, yeah, February 1st.
Yeah, that gives us 2 weeks to prep, plenty of time to post or to warn the meeting.
Yep.
And 7 o'clock for that as well.
Sounds good.
Okay.
7 o'clock, February 1st.
And there was nothing but the library that used the Monday slot, right, for meetings, other than that one select board special meeting. So
Select board is the second and fourth
Right,
Tuesdays.
And so between now and the 1st, we can be kind of sharing things and maybe, so for goals for the 1st, we would want a draft of a job description with kind of any discussion points or things that need to be talked about within the full committee and giving feedback from the full committee, and same maybe a draft of a survey and a plan for points of community input that then we can get feedback on and take those to the trustees the next week.
Great.
That sounds good.
We do have a question on the chat side, if anyone else is seeing that. Will the Community Outreach Committee be in charge of collecting references?
I wouldn't think so. I would expect that to go through the trustees, but I think we also don't necessarily know what the next step of the hiring process will look like and what the trustees will want the committee's role to be in that.
Agreed.
So to be determined.
Okay.
Right. Any other comments or questions, anything before we close?
What is our plan for posting these minutes? Are we going to have a draft that we'll just send around for everyone to confirm on?
Fern, can you, will you be able to send a draft of the minutes and then we can comment on that and then you'll post it?
I can. They need
How do you
to be
usually do it
posted.
with the, because with the trustees, we would have the minutes, but then we would approve them at the next meeting, they would be
Usually,
accepted.
well, what I do as a trustee, and what we've done is I write up the minutes, I send them to the members of the board. They can submit corrections or additions before they are posted. And then we again review it at the official meeting for any further comments or corrections, and then vote on it. That's usually how we've done it. You can do it any way you want.
So given the time frame for this, maybe Fern, if you can send the minutes to all of us by email and we can
The
get back
meetings need to
you
be
then.
posted no more than 5 days after.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I interrupted you. I'm sorry. The minutes need to be posted publicly on the website within 5 days of the actual meeting. So they have to be posted no later than Saturday evening
Okay,
of the following.
great. So we'll keep an eye out for an email from Fern so then she can get that posted within 5 days. All right,
I just thought of one
Kathy.
organizational question is, does the library have a Google Drive? Anna, did you use like your personal Google?
I used my personal one and just made sure that that document had specifically your emails in terms of sharing capabilities, and I felt comfortable with that. But I don't know if there's.
And this, I mean, this might not be necessary for others, but I just wondered, I just picture a lot of documents with this process. And I wondered if I don't know if the library has a G Suite or they have a Google Drive where they could give access to the committee where like all the job descriptions could be dropped in there and any documents we're collecting and circulating. I know they've been emailed, but sometimes it's nice if they're in a place that we can access. If that's not a possibility, that's fine. Just an idea.
Ben, if you're still on the call, I feel like you often have technical answers. Are you aware of any Google folder that we could have access to that's managed by the library?
Yeah, we don't have a professional Google Suite. I'm sorry about the lights there. But we could certainly make a folder that's curated and made, that the library allows, be accessed by, yeah, we can make a space for you.
Okay.
That would be great.
All right.
All right.
So is that, yeah, I'll just make a folder and you can put whatever you want in there.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Anything else?
I'm going to send the job descriptions around to Jen and Teresa, but if you want me to put them in a general folder, just give me a heads up.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope I get to see people in person someday.
Yeah, great to work with you.
Yeah.
Stay well and see you
Right.
soon.
Yeah, great meeting, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Right. Bye.